said, I was at that point scared of Ms. Barnes, and I did write a grievance to the mayor and council, and I also filed a police report to document what he had done to me. I have copies of both of those. Now, also back during September, October of last year, uh, Mayor Williams approached me and two of the other department heads about finding $40,000 in our budget to pay for a digital sign that she wanted. I explained to her that that is something that we needed to, for the council to vote on. Also, you needed to, because of the amount and stuff, you needed to get people to send in bids for that. However, she did not like to hear that from me, and the vendor that she wanted was also the same vendor who created her campaign signs that year. Nevertheless, the council did not come up. She did not recommend it to the council. So y'all did not spend $40,000 on the digital sign. But I say that to start to explain the relationship between her and I. Also, during that same time period that year, we wanted to start building Fire Station 3. And the Public Works Director mentioned that he was, I think it was already advertised for, I think. But he was going to speak with one of the contractors that was going to put in a bid. Councilman Bryant stated that she wanted to attend this meeting with the Public Works Director, in which he said, okay, let's go. Once we received the bids, we noticed that one of the bids was written by BCI, which is Mrs. Or Councilwoman Bryant's husband's construction company, I'm sorry. And because of that, we could not take those bids. We informed her that he had put in a bid. She stated she didn't know. But because of that, the process was muddy because she had attended a meeting with another contractor and knew firsthand what he was going to offer. So we did send out another advertisement for bids. Now, in late November, there was a pre-bid meeting on, I think it was a pre-bid meeting, on the demolition of the old hospital. And I believe only one of the contractors came to that meeting, but not to get all down in details. In December, I received an email from Ms. Parker, that's Public Works Director, that once they had the bid opening for the demolition of the hospital, one contractor did not fulfill all of the requirements. However, he was the lowest bid. I asked Mr. Carpenter to send me what the advertisement said, because maybe we can have waived those informalities, because it was a difference of about $80,000, in which he did that. The city attorney and I spoke about it, and it was provision that we could waive those informalities. And the city attorney had to write a letter stating that. Now, the mayor and council had to vote to accept or to waive these informalities and accept this bid, in which they did, and it was a vote all in favor, and at no time was there any discussion as to the relationship between some of the mayor and council members and the contractor. Let me go back. Also back in October, we had a barbecue and blues during the week of homecoming on that Friday. Now, I was told that the city would not have to pay any money for this event, and that Mr. Larry Harris would be the sponsor for this event. Well, like that Friday of the barbecue and blues, I was called by Mayor Williams, and she stated that we needed to pay the entertainment for that night, and I've forgotten how much it was. It was like $2,000 something, and that I need to come down and sign the check. So that Friday night, I came down. The check was written by my finance director, but you need 2 signatures on it, so that's why I had to sign it. And on Monday, when we got back in, she stated that Mr. Harris had paid the entertainment and that we needed to reimburse him his money. I stated to her, well, I need an invoice or something showing that he actually paid the sponsors, and that's why we need to pay him. And it was all rush, and she wasn't gonna leave out the office unless the check was written in. So I said, well, bring back an invoice. So we can have that for our documentation. Well, I checked a couple of weeks later, and when I asked my finance director, hey, did you ever get that invoice? She showed me a check request that I give out to all of them when they go on trips, and if they need to be reimbursed or whatever, they fill it out. A check request signed by Mary Williams that said, and it was attached to a flyer for the Barbecue and Blues, and to write Mr. Larry Harris a check for $2,000. So I still didn't have proof that Mr. Harris had paid $2,000 to whoever in order for the city to be able to say, well, this is why we paid him $2,000. And I want you to keep in mind that Mr. Harris is the same person who bid was accepted by a unanimous vote by this mayor and council as to do the demolition on the hospital. So in February, we found out that we were awarded the grant that would pay for this demolition. Mayor Williams wanted to start immediately, and I cautioned her that at this time we do not have the funds to pay the contractor, because I had spoken to him and I asked, well, how long will it take before you would need some money? And he said, well, 2 weeks. So we're not gonna have, because he said it would be about $50,000. Not gonna have $50,000 to just give to you in 2 weeks, because we don't have the money, and it takes DCA 30 to 45 days to reimburse once they're given an invoice. Mayor Williams was of course upset about that because she wanted it to start immediately, and I said, well, he can go on and start, but we won't be able to pay him. She asked Ms. Bryant to talk to me about it, in which she did, and I told her the same thing. And I said, well, if you guys get the council to vote on this and say, hey, give this man $50,000 before he does any work, I'm good, because at the end of the day, I serve at the pleasure of the mayor and council. They set the policies and tell me how to execute those policies, so that would have been fine. I was not comfortable with doing it based on 1 or 2 people wanting me to just write the check. In this meeting, I recommended to not give the money because we didn't have it, and they stated their reasons why we should, and the council voted 5-2 to not give Mr. Harris his money, but that he could go on and start. This is where stuff kind of hit the fan. After that, Mayor Williams and I had a discussion about it in that next day, and she told me that Ms. Juanita was upset with me and that she had called me a bitch and thought that I just needed to do what they said. I didn't believe it because I was, thought I was okay with everyone, so I didn't know why she would call me a bitch. But shortly after that, they had the pre-construction meeting. I'm sorry, that same day. Before the meeting, they had the pre-construction meeting, in which Mr. Harris told us that there would not be any subcontractors, because if it's a subcontractor, then there were certain documents that you would have to file with having a subcontractor in place. Well, once I received the full contract that included the bid as well, I noticed on there, one, that the address that this contractor used was the same address as Ms. Bryant's home address. And also I noticed that the subcontractor was listed, which is BCI, which is Ms. Bryant's husband's construction company. Well, I called my public works director because it was his job to look all of this over before I saw it. And I asked him, hey, did you see this? He stated that he did, and that he thought that the BCI would be paid via 1099 instead of a W-2, and that people do that to get around saying that they're actually an employee versus an independent contractor. And I told him, well, you still should have told me about this, because this is still, this should have been known to the rest of the members, that her husband would be a subcontractor, therefore he would be benefiting from the money that that construction company would be getting from doing that project. But that's where that stayed. After that, I received a phone call from Councilman Barnes. Well, no, I called Councilman Barnes that day because I wanted to know about some fiber optic stuff, and he's supposed to be the expert on that. And then he got into asking me about the address on the contract because I had sent it out to the entire mayor and council. I told him what I knew, that, yep, that's her address, that's all I know. And that I had also spoken with Greg, who is the grant administrator with DCA. I'm sorry, not with DCA, with the Middle Georgia Region Commission. And he had told me that the contractor needed to change the address to what his business address is. And if there is a subcontractor, then there was other forms that need to be filled out. And we had also let the city attorney know about this as well. Well, Councilman Barnes told me that this was all illegal and he was going to contact the GBI. I told him to please don't do that. You probably need to talk to Chief Spurgeon about that first. I believe they had a conversation because the next thing I know, I received an email from Chief Spurgeon stating that Mr. Councilman Barnes had made a criminal complaint to him and that he was sending it up the chain as per usual because it was a conflict of interest for our police department to investigate it, and that it would be handled by the Attorney General's office and the FBI. Then I received a anonymous letter. I received a letter as well as the chief of police received a separate letter, but they were saying the exact same thing, in which it made mention to what I just told you about the contract and things. And also it made mention to the fact that Mayor Williams at the time was known to have rented the room that the person who was shot at the Days Inn or shot himself at the Days Inn was rented in her name. And they had ethical concerns about this as well as some criminal concerns. So per the ethics code in our charter, I called Ms. Bryant and told her about it. And I told her that the next step is to convene the ethics board. And she said, okay, because I want to testify. Well, I'm not going to give you what they said, but she was okay. I also told Mayor Williams about it. And from my conversation, she asked me as to why, if this should be investigated or not, because it was not signed. I informed her that per your ethics code does not have to be signed. All it has to be is written, and she told me to ask the city attorney, and I told her, okay, I will satisfy your curiosity. And the city attorney stated at the time that no, it does not have to be signed. All it has to be is written. However, if they in the future would like to change their ethics code, they can change it to the one GMA has, which includes that it has to be signed. An admission was also given to me that the room was rented. Well, that she called and talked to the hotel about renting this room. I don't know if she knew who the person was or not, but she did make that phone call. And she had made this statement to also several employees in the administration department as well, that she did make that phone call. And I received a lot of backlash from this because I knew what our ethics code stated, that an ethics board should be convened to investigate this. There are several, well, I talked to the city attorney and he told me, give it to the council to vote on. Because of the position I was put in, I work for these people. An ethics complaint is filed on 2 of them, and what should I do? Because if that person who did write the anonymous letter comes in and says, hey, I wrote it, you didn't investigate it, so you must hit it, I am still an officer of court, and I am not going to break the law for anybody. If there are policies or procedures in place, I am going to follow them, as I have done the entire time that I've been here. And that's all I was trying to do with this. I didn't know if they did it or not. But I just knew it was a procedure in place and that it should be followed. Okay. So in my head, they didn't know this, but I knew that this ethics complaint, this anonymous ethics complaint, wasn't that anonymous because it could be corroborated by some of the statements that were made by Councilman Barnes with some of the issues that he had. But of course, I didn't want to say that because I'm in a pickle. I work for all of these people, and this person filing criminal complaints on these two people and all of that. Anyway, then a meeting after that, I was approached by Councilwoman Bryant, and she told me, because Chief Virgin had left, and she asked me to call him back over here because she wanted to ask him about how she could bail out the guy who shot himself in the Days Inn. And I told her, well, might want to stay away from that. And she said, no, my husband is going to do it. I said, okay. And I don't know if she bailed a guy out or not, because I just left it at that, or if her husband did it or not. But that was the conversation that we had. Then, sometime after that, I was contacted by the FBI and asked questions. I'm not going to go into detail about the questions they asked me, but since then I have been cooperating with them. I was given a subpoena in which I was asked to gather certain documentations, which I did do while I was here.